Mr. Administrator, on the lead-off day to UAS 2017, the FAA UAS Symposium, you made a statement that heretofore this was the easy stuff. I'm scared to ask, but what's the hard stuff?
Well, we have to figure out how to deal with much more complex operations, such as flights over people or flights beyond visual line of sight. And that brings in questions that we haven't really had to struggle with up until now, such as, what sort of identification technology do we need to have so that our partners in law enforcement and national security might understand when an unmanned aircraft is in a particular area. Is it there because it should be there, or is it there because perhaps of some nefarious intent? How do they sort through that? And so we have to deal with these questions of finding that right balance between accommodating people who want to use the technology to do great things, but also recognizing that there may be challenges in terms of how we integrate it and ensure it's safe and secure.
Of the quote-unquote hard things that are to come, are there any in particular that seem at this stage of the game to be particularly solvable or particularly difficult?
Well, I think ultimately all of them will be solvable. It's just a question of, is it going to be technology? Is it going to be operations? And sometimes a big part of it is just education, understanding what the capabilities are that are out there that we are able to take advantage of. The important thing in solving all of these challenges is to bring all the relevant stakeholders together to talk about it. This is new for everyone. And so, you're dealing with a cast of characters that maybe we haven't dealt with in the past in aviation. Law enforcement is dealing with whole different users doing very different things that causes them to rethink how a cop on the beat is going to do his or her job. And from the technology industry, they want to do the right thing, but they recognize this is really different than getting a new iPhone into the marketplace. This is really something that they want to ensure that they're doing it responsibly, that they're operating a safe system, and that they can address a lot of the concerns, because they don't want this industry to be set back because of something that represents a threat that no one had thought about. They want to do it right.
One of the things he had mentioned was putting together programs by which law enforcement and other interested agencies can actually identify the vehicles involved in any kind of questionable incident. DJI just put out a paper literally as you were speaking about it, but it certainly seems to be something that the industry is responding to. Is this something that's going to have a short fuse?
It does have a pretty short fuse. We're putting together our rulemaking committee to look at this question of identification systems, and we envision it to be a very short-term, quick response kind of activity, similar to what we did for the registry. This is the kind of question that if we say it's going to take us 5 years to resolve it, it will. But if we give ourselves a very focused time frame, we bring a lot of smart people together, I'm very confident we're going to get something out quickly.
I hear a lot from commercial operators about the difficulty in being able to conduct business when authorizations are on an unlimited timetable and waivers are by the right hand of God at this point. What can they look forward to in the near and far future in regards to being able to find an equitable, dependable way to understand where they can operate when they get a job that's a third of a mile inside a Class B?
Some things, are always going to take longer when you're doing it for the first time. And so there are two things that we're really focused on. One is, what are the tools that we're making available to our inspectors and to the people that are approving waivers so that we can help them do their job more quickly by not relying on paper maps or paper regulations. Having automated systems that enable them to have a lot of information at their fingertips that they're able to respond quickly to is one thing. The second thing is data and experience. The first time someone applies to do something, you have to study it pretty carefully to make sure that you understand what's being anticipated, what's being contemplated, what are the mitigations that are put in place. But now we've done a couple of hundred waivers for operations at night. We know an awful lot about how you look at a waiver for operations at night. And so that enables us to develop checklists based on the data, based on what their track record has been, that enables us to expedite them. Clearly, I would like it to move a lot faster, and we're very focused on that.
You presided over one of the most unique aerocultural phenomenons in the general aviation and sport aviation and commercial aviation universe, where a community wanted to be regulated because there was so many questionable issues that they just wanted somebody to tell them what they could do and what they couldn't do and work from there. How do you feel that the community at this point is responding to what the FAA is trying to do, and where does the relationship sit right now?
I think the relationship is in a good place. You're always going to have a tension between those who question the need for any regulation whatsoever. But the vast majority of people that I talk to are very responsible and want to do this right. They want to ensure that the promise of unmanned aircraft is not something that doesn't live up to its potential because something dumb happens and there's some terrible accident or there is some misstep that causes the public to lose confidence in it. There is always concern about the road ahead, and particularly as we're going through a change of administration, people are concerned, is that going to be a change of direction? Is that going to, cause us to perhaps lose some time in things that we've been working on for a while? But everything that I've been hearing from the administration, from our colleagues in the White House and the department is keep going and let's get it out there more quickly.
In both the hobby as well as commercial drone segments, they are watching the funding issue come up again and again of late. Especially, again, with this administration and questions about who's going to be paying for what up and down the line. On either the hobby or commercial side, should there be an expectation of additional fees and necessary to build up FAA support for what's coming?
Well, we don't know what the answer to that is going to be yet. We've asked the Drone Advisory Committee to look at this whole question of long-term funding, but I think it's fair to say that aviation has always supported the operations of the FAA through some combination of taxes and fees. And I think the unmanned aircraft industry recognizes that. They see the benefits of that because it's something they can point to that creates a shared sense of purpose, ownership, but it also gives the agency what it needs to be responsive to what industry is looking for there. What it's going to look like, it's certainly not going to be an airline ticket tax, and fuel taxes probably aren't that relevant toward this particular segment. But I do think that this has got to be part of the conversation. And what I'm hearing from the industry is they understand that. Their big question is they don't want something imposed that has a stifling effect on the industry. And so we're really looking at this as a long-term proposition, to figure out what makes sense and what's the best way to implement it.
On the preemption question, which was partially addressed today, there are a lot of questions where municipalities and even states are enacting regulation that exceed or otherwise hamper what would be considered to be FAA control over airspace. At what point is there a dividing line at which you say, wait a second, this is our responsibility, enough?
There is going to be a sorting out period where there's got to be some experimentation of what works, what doesn't work. And it's for that reason that we've asked the DAC to look at this question of roles. We don't, some frame it as the preemption tasking. We view it more as defining what are appropriate roles. We have put out a lot of information for state and local partners. What are some best practices? What are some things that they might consider? And many of the state and local governments have actually been very thoughtful and creative about, ways to address it. But I think that it was very well summed up by Mayor Ed Lee of San Francisco, who sits on the DAC, when he pointed out, the challenge that they have at the local level is quite simple. If someone is flying a drone over, private property and annoying the property owner, that property owner is likely not going to call the FAA. They're going to call the mayor. And they're going to ask the mayor, what are you doing about this? And so what Mayor Lee and all his colleagues in the U.S. Conference of Mayors are really looking for is to ensure that there's a strong partnership there, that we understand each other's roles. And I'm confident that as we go through this work, what will emerge is a workable solution, just as we have put in place for how we operate airports today. It's going to be a little bit different, and it's going to raise different questions. But we've been able to get through this in the past, and I think we will in this case as well.
Final question. You've been in the catbird seat for the birth of a whole new industry. So I'm going to put you on the hot seat here and just ask you to look ahead. 5, 10, 20 years from now, what do you envision your work producing down the line?
Well, I think that we are going to see unmanned aircraft deliveries of some form. There's going to be a certain shaking out of the market. I wouldn't rule out that we're going to see, the autonomous taxi industry. There are a million questions that need to be answered with respect to how do we ensure that it's safe, the roles and responsibilities, federal, state, local governments, how does private industry engage in this, what are standards that can be applied internationally. You think about it, it took the aviation industry to get 100 years to get to where we are today. We don't have that kind of a time frame simply because these things are proliferating at such a rate. But the other thing is they're evolving very quickly. And as part of that evolution, it's not just capabilities and gee whiz kind of stuff. It's very important things like safeguards that are built into the aircraft or standards that are developed and widely deployed, or tools that are available for users of the system. And so, in a funny sort of way, I think this could be very good for aviation generally, because what this does is it is the next big innovation in what has been a long history of innovation in aviation and aerospace, and I think that's good for all of us.
I think the spin-off technologies alone are going to be remarkable.
Exactly.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Aero-TV is brought to you by Concorde's recombinant gas RG series sealed battery technology produces a high-performance battery with the advantages of being pre-tested and fully charged at the factory. Find out more about Concorde's entire line of batteries at www.concordebattery.com. Concorde, the heart of your aircraft.